Kruger. My pronouns are he, they, and I am the Director of Customer Support at Meetup. And I am really excited to be joining you all for another Meetup live event. Today, we're joined by special guest Jenna Jaffe, she, her pronouns, and Ariel D'Angelo, she, her pronouns. And they're going to be sharing on the importance of coming out in the LGBTQIA+ community and how living one's truth can impact others. You're going to hear about the validation that came with sharing their identity and learn how they found a community that embraced and supported them throughout their journey. We're going to be sharing some personal stories today, and so we want to set an intention of safety within the space. If there's anything you hear that's triggering or brings up difficult emotions, please check out the resources we're going to share in the chat that might help you find someone to talk to. And before we get started, I'm going to just go over some quick guidelines for this event. We are going to be recording this event. You will not appear in this video. If you joined us, your faces are not on the screen. We do have a mute courtesy, so all audio is muted from the folks who aren't the panelists. But if you do have questions, we want to hear your questions and we want to answer your questions. So you can submit those through the QA button on the bottom control panel. You can just click on that and you could submit a question and then we'll try to answer that towards the end of this event. And we also have closed captioning available. To turn it on, you can click on the live transcription icon at the bottom of your screen and just select your preference. So with that said, we're going to go into just a quick formatting. We got an introduction. It's going to be about 5 minutes. Then we're going to do a chat with Ariel and Jenna, and then we're going to get into QA. So let's kick it off. I'd love to get an intro from each of our panelists. Let's start with Jenna, and then we'll go to Ariel.
Hi, so I am Jenna Jaffe, she, her pronouns, and I am a mom of 2 kids. My wife and I did reciprocal IVF for both of them. So we used my wife's eggs and I carried, we used donor sperm. And then I had to go through, well, my wife and I had to go through something called second parent adoption to both have the same legal rights to our children as each other. And I kind of shared this whole entire journey on social media and people had so many questions that I started an organization that really talk all about the legal and fertility resources for our community. The legal needs of our community are so different. So I started an organization called Connecting Rainbows that really provides all of that information for free, you know, for all of us so that we can take care of ourselves, especially in light of, you know, everything that's been happening these days. And then I do a lot of advocacy and activism on my personal Instagram.
Amazing. Happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Ariel, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, my name is Ariel D'Angelo. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm an LGBTQ empowerment coach. And I'm also the founder of We the Rainbow, which is an LGBTQ personal development organization. And inside of that space, I help to empower LGBTQ people through community, events, coaching, and more. And I'm so excited to be here today. So thank you.
We're excited to have you. Happy Pride to you as well. And happy Pride to everybody joining us today. So want to kick it off with sort of a general question. Why is coming out important? And if in kind of like sharing the answer to that question, maybe if you're okay with it, kind of sharing some elements of your own coming out story to help us sort of like understand the importance of coming out.
You want to go first?
Yeah, sure, I'll take it. You know, I think coming out is important for so many reasons. And I always emphasize that, you know, if you are in the process of coming out, if you're considering coming out, to make sure that you prioritize your safety first and foremost. We know that there's a lot of people in our families, communities who might not be so supportive. So I always encourage you to have a safe space to come out in. But, you know, if you are feeling ready to come out, I think that the beautiful thing in coming out is being able to express yourself authentically to those around you. I know that for me personally, having lived so many years in the closet, it really took a toll on me emotionally, physically, in all the ways. It also got in the way of my relationships and connections. So being able to be out and be my real self really has just allowed me to thrive in all areas of my life. So if you do have that safe space to come out in, I think that it's so, so important to show the world who you really are. And it also creates such an empowering ripple effect.
Yeah.
Thank you. What about you, Jenna?
Yeah. So somebody just said that they came out this month. That's amazing. Congratulations. I think that, so my story isn't like typical. I had no idea. I was like living under a rock. I was an athlete my whole life. So like I didn't date like at all. And I was just trading and didn't live in I lived in the suburbs, no gay people really. I went to college, I was an athlete. I did theater, so I knew gay men, but I didn't know any lesbians. At the time, like non-binary wasn't really like as prominent. I'm old. And I didn't know anyone who was trans either. So I don't know. I just was living my life. And when I went to law school, it was a very liberal school in New York. And that's when I started to meet other lesbians and other individuals who identified differently. And I was like, huh. Got me started thinking. I kind of came out very quickly and it went pretty well for the most part. It took my dad a while to come around. He was raised strict Catholic, he was in the military. And I think that like the biggest thing that I like to share with people is that usually you've had a lot of time to process like who you are, right? And coming to terms with accepting that. So to kind of give that to other people as well, right? Like you've had time to process, but you're sharing like a very, very big thing with somebody else. And I wish it wasn't like a big thing, but like parents have expectations of their children, they envision a life for them. I have children. I don't envision them to be straight, but it doesn't matter. Like my parents had that vision for me. And so I was like, I need to give my dad that time that I've had. And I think that you're able to kind of just see it from a different way when you think about it like that. But it's so important to come out just to be true to you, to help other people. It's not easy being such a public figure in terms of like being this like lesbian influencer on Instagram. I get a lot of hate, but it doesn't bother me because I'm confident in who I am and I know how it helps other people. And so if you are out, if you're comfortable being out, if you're confident, like you are helping other people just by being yourself.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing personal stories. Like I'll just quickly share my own quick story. Like like you mentioned, I had, I came out to myself first. And early, I was like 14 when I came out as being queer. And then it wasn't until many years later, in fact, in the last 2 years, that I came out as being trans. And so, I had a journey. I also, before that, came out as being non-binary. So it's this like spectrum of coming out that's been a really beautiful process, but it is challenging, I've often been kind of bowled over by how I could kind of hide my own identity from myself for so long in certain ways. But it's been such a freeing process to be able to connect to who I am and share that with other people in a deeper way. And it has helped create more authentic connections and relationships with people. And it's really quite beautiful. So thank you for sharing. So I wanted to ask you each, how far have you personally come with your confidence in your identity and being your authentic self through sort of just like who you are, but also in the coming out process? And in that, like, what are some of the tips that you are still sort of that you would share with somebody who's trying to still kind of understand themselves or process their journey of coming out, right?
Yeah. I would say that in my process of coming out, I used to have so much shame around my identity. So my confidence used to be extremely low. And that wasn't just in regard to like being a queer person. It was in every area of my life because I really do believe that it's all connected. So I was living with so much shame, so much guilt, so much fear around who I was. And like I was kind of sharing earlier, it started to make me physically sick. I was so anxious, so depressed, I just wasn't expressing myself at all. And it really took a toll on me. So when I was in the process of coming out and I felt that lack of confidence and that fear around who I was like, this has got to be easier. Like, how is this still a thing? Why is it still so hard to come out? And I think that often people think like, oh, it's 2022, you know, it's easy nowadays. And that's just not the case for so many people. And I can say that it wasn't for me. So, you know, what inspired me ultimately was I realized I had to get help because I couldn't continue living the way that I was living. And through that process, I decided to sign up for a retreat that was all about self-love and self-compassion. And it was through gaining that self-love and that awareness of, you know, all aspects of myself that I was able to cultivate this really loving relationship with myself. And that's when my confidence skyrocketed. And so from there, I was like, you know what? Like, if I ultimately get to the other side of this journey of coming out, if I'm ever able to come out personally, I'm going to make it my mission to help other people do the same and to help them have self-compassion and confidence in their own journeys through coming out, transitioning, being an LGBTQ person in the world. So that's exactly what I do today and why I do it.
Ah, that's so inspiring. I'm reminded of what, you know, RuPaul says, if you can't learn to love yourself, how the heck are you gonna love someone else? You know, it's just so true.
Yeah, absolutely.
How about you, Jenna?
Yeah, so, you know, for me, I think that I had such a vision of my own. Like, so I had dated men before. Again, I was like, I was just like living in another world. I'm like, I had no idea. And then when I met my first girlfriend and we were together for almost 3 years and like we had picked out rings and stuff like that, I still like 2 years in was like, I don't know if I can marry a woman. Like I just, you know, I mean, I was 2 years into the process of coming out. It was, you know, my first girlfriend was very serious. It was, I mean, it was like typical, like U-Haul, whatever. But I still was like, I don't know that I can. And ultimately we broke up. And that breakup made me realize that I could, that like the relationship wasn't good. Like at that point it was done, but I was like, wow, like if I was more confident in who I was, if I was more sure that I could be a woman who married another woman, or, you know, just really accepting being part of the LGBTQ plus community, like, would that have been different? Again, I'm so glad it worked out differently because, you know, I have my wife now, but, you know, I think that, you know, it's as that verse said, it's a process. I had a lot of therapy, like, because I was just so confused. But I think that, you know, over time, I mean, I've been out now for over a decade, you gain the confidence in who you are. And I think that especially becoming a mom, like for me, like being a parent, like you just develop this backbone where like you just, I don't know, like I'm just so proud of the life that we've created and my family. And we've had to work so hard to have a family that like I am like loud and proud. And I don't know at like what the turning point exactly was, but I think that like I show up daily like as a very like out and proud, you know, queer person. And yeah, but it takes time. It definitely takes time. When people used to like send hate messages and stuff, it definitely used to bother me. And now I'm just like, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. You must be miserable because I'm not.
Yeah, and that's probably true, you know, and there's a lot there. Similarly, like when I came out early and, you know, I was like a kid growing up in the 90s and I just knew that I was queer, and I like had, you know, I remember looking in the phone book because we like have like the internet, this is like the early 90s, and looking and finding this gay youth group in South Orange, New Jersey, where I, you know, near where I was growing up. And I like, you know, had to kind of like, I called like a hotline and I talked to somebody and they coached me through how to come out to my parents. And I was lucky that I had a very supportive, like very loving parents who brought me to this gay youth group that existed. And I got to meet with these other kids who were like 14, 15 and just be with community. And it really gave me the confidence to see other people who were going through the same thing and just kind of figuring out what their queer identity was at like, you know, in adolescence. And it was really helpful. And I think it's the same thing for like trans youth now. I have like a trans mask meetup group where we just meet like once a month and we just talk about like what's going on in our lives and just build relationships with other people who have similar identities and experiences. Cool. So what are you as individuals doing to make the coming out experience better for others?
I can go first this time. I think, so my like main platform is I'm on Instagram, and it's a place where I, for years now, have just been authentically just sharing my life and my story and my journey, getting married, with doing the fertility process and having our first child, and doing fertility process again, having our second, which was not an easy journey. And then just raising a family. We're in the suburbs. I'm outside Philadelphia, so it's like much more liberal. But there's still stuff. And I share very openly and transparently what I go through, including the hard part. And I am a lawyer by background. And so, I think that we would be really remiss to not mention everything that's happening in the world today and in the United States. And that I think that it's making it very challenging for especially the youth, LGBTQ plus youth, to come out. And I think that one of the most beautiful things about social media, it can definitely be like a negative place, but I think one of the most beautiful things about it is being able to create that community. Even if you're not vocal, even if you don't have any pictures, to being able to follow other queer individuals and just see that life that you want for yourself and see how possible it is. I'm in a group of all these lesbian creators on Instagram, and, we message each other every day and we talk every day. And it's just so nice to be a part of something like that, where I don't have a ton of local lesbian friends, but I have them all over the world on social media. And I think that that's just like amazing. So, we always are empowering each other to show up and to speak out and, partner with organizations who are doing good for the community. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, community is so important. For me, it's in the direct work that I do with my clients one-on-one, in my group coaching program, in my larger communities that I've created, that are virtual and international. And, we're just constantly having those conversations that people don't typically get to have with their family members or their friends who don't understand what that experience is like. So just creating that safe space, that safe container to explore that, talk about it, support each other through it, has been so huge and like so life-saving for so many people. And even beyond that, just like in the content that I'm creating on TikTok, on Instagram, keeping it, some of it's like very lighthearted and funny, and other content that I create is more inspiring, educational. So I feel like what I really missed out on when I was in the closet was like relating to the gay memes, or there were no gay memes. It was just straight memes about straight relationships. And I was like, I wish we had like gay humor and gay memes on the internet. So that's what I've done, is like I've gone and created LGBTQ content that all LGBTQ people can relate to. And so it's in the lighthearted stuff as well as like the deep healing work as well.
Yeah, totally. And like it's so important. The representation piece is so important, because I think it's like for all of us just sharing our stories, if we hadn't seen somebody who had gone before us who we could identify with and be like, that's they have, I want what they have. That was really a huge piece of being able to feel comfortable, or the confidence to go after it and see somebody living a normalized life, right? Or a life that like seemed really awesome and beautiful, and then going for it. And so that's all, like, representation is just so important, right? And social media. So I am very glad you both are doing what you're doing and creating that space in the world. It's amazing. What resources can those who are hesitant to kind of come out of the closet, or to have like that confidence, like what resources can you like specifically point folks towards?
So I think that, there's many different resources, such as like certain nonprofits, like the Trevor Project, It Gets Better, what Jenna's doing in the world. There's so many different resources out there. Also We the Rainbow, my community online. If you're just looking for a safe space, you're looking for people who understand, we have a whole platform. But yeah, I think, you know, Jenna, also, I'm sure you can speak to like the resources you provide, but I guess the resources that I'm providing are more like emotional support through those experiences. But I think that, you know, what you guys have been providing, like I think there are resources in the document as well for people once they leave this call.
Yeah, yeah,
right?
we're going to share them in the chat. I think a
Cool.
lot of what you
Yeah.
mentioned and other things, yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. So, I mean, like, if anybody in this audience is looking for those resources, they're going to be shared here. And you can always reach out to one of us. Like, my DMs are open. If you ever want to send me a message, ask a question, need some support, whatever it is, I can point you in the right direction.
Amazing. Yeah, very cool.
I was going to say Ariel, because she's got a business that's, you know, dedicated to this. Mine is more of like growing, like starting and growing your family. It's kind of like post. So you start with Ariel, and then you can come over to Connecting Rainbows and have
Right.
babies.
Right, exactly. You like identify like who you are,
There you go.
somebody, and then start a family if you want to. Yeah, absolutely. It's beautiful. We got you covered here, folks.
Yeah, exactly.
So going back to kind of like the process and the journey of coming out, you know, like again, I shared a little bit about my own journey. You know, I came out a couple of years ago as trans, and I had to like come out to my family again. And it was just this like very interesting process, because it was like, you know, I wrote a letter, like an email to my family. And in part of what I like really wanted to highlight in that email was like, I totally get it if you like have feelings or like have your own journey of processing this. There are definitely resources. You should check them out, like go online, like go to therapy, but like basically don't process it with me. You know, it's like, that's your thing. I'm processing my own experience of this, but I don't need to process your experience of my coming out with you. And that was like, it was kind of like something I had to talk through with folks, but it was definitely, I've shared that with people and they found that very helpful in the past, to just like, oh yeah, that's right. I can put that in. I can create boundaries around how much I process the coming out process of my coming out journey, because it's personal, with other people, my family or friends or people at work. So wanted to share that, but also get your take on what what your experiences were with your family or friends, or tips that you might have for people coming out.
I love that you set boundaries. Like, that is beautiful. And like the most amazing tip that you could give, for sure. I think that like protecting your own energy and protecting, you know, your own self, because you've been going through so much already, and it's like a really big burden to carry. You know, and as you're still coming to terms with it too, you know, like, and it's kind of like when you're coming to terms, you're still coming to terms with it, and then you're also coming to terms with your family coming to coming to terms with it, that you're like, that I feel like that's how I was too. Like my dad, we didn't speak for a little while, but I was just like, Mom, you need to you do that.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna go over here. You know, it's kind of just yeah, you figure that out over there. But I just want to say I love that. Boundaries are.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. I think that so many of us in the process of coming out try to do it on other people's timelines and try to please the people around us. Excuse me. But this is about nobody other than you. So creating those boundaries, doing what feels best for you, doing what makes you feel most comfortable, and knowing that you don't need to do the emotional labor, like of educating the people around you. You can actually count on your allies, your siblings, your friends to take that from you. If you know you don't feel like discussing that with your family, that's totally fine. And also, like, there's no one right way to come out. I also wrote a letter to my parents and I dropped it in our family group text thread, and everyone's like, you should do this in person. And I was like, no, you know, no one can tell you what the right way to come out is. And I probably wouldn't have come out for another 10 years if I didn't do it then and in that way. And so, you know, just again, what Jenna said, like honoring that everybody is in their own process of like really absorbing this information, and it has nothing to do with you, how others respond, and it has everything to do with them.
Yeah, that's a great point. That is a great point, because I think it can get very confusing. when people react in a way that's like more negative and not as affirming as like we would hope them to respond, that it's like, it's not about us, it's about their perception. So yeah. Wow. Powerful. What, there's a lot of stuff going on right now in the world, in the country. That's not, I mean, it's very hard right now, especially to be trans youth, gay youth, the Don't Say Gay, what's going on in many different states around healthcare for trans folks. How do we center joy in our community in the face of this? What do we do? What do you do? What do we do?
So I do a lot of, on my social media, I do a lot of education and advocacy. And for me, I've been turning a lot of this stuff into like funny reels, where I've actually been like mocking some of these states, just because I am like, if I don't laugh, I'm gonna cry. But I think also just like, I don't know, like a bunch of like, again, my friends who are like all like creators on Instagram, we've just been like even louder and prouder. You know what I mean? And again, I'm very privileged to live where I do, and to be in the community that I am, where I can be out. And I can feel safe about that. So I don't take that for granted. And so I think that it's also even more important to continue to show up for these other individuals who either can't or are in these states and countries where it's not safe.
Yeah.
But a big part of like what I do is like education. So I have a lot of people on Instagram who follow me that are allies, and they say to me that like I learned so much from you, because I'll be like, okay, cool, Ohio just came out with this new bill that takes Florida's bill and like makes it even worse by 10, and they didn't know that, and people don't know that. And so it's just putting it in their face and reminding them about it, to encourage them to vote and really get out there and speak out and speak up, because it's kind of like this day and age, especially, allies like can't stay quiet. Like there's no more of supporting from the sidelines kind of a thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I think what's super important through this time is to, at least as someone who's like a practitioner and a space holder for people who are coming to me to discuss what's going on and how they feel, how it's affecting them, to hold space for people who do need to share, especially if you're an ally and you're in here right now, just creating like safety for your LGBTQ loved ones to share about it. I think that sometimes people in our life have good intentions and they try to create safety, but what it then becomes is like a ton of questions being aimed at us and like accusations, whatever it is. So if you are an ally, just really, getting used to creating a safe space and listening to how you can support your loved ones during this time. And, I think as far as centering joy, it's similar to what Jenna was saying. Like, this is, if anything, inspiring me to show up more and more and be my most authentic self. And I think that just, again, has such a ripple effect. And it inspires other people to do the same and to be advocates for what's going on. So centering joy, I think coming together in community, uplifting each other, leaning into love, and like educating. What I try to personally do is educate with love, even when I'm angry. And I'm not saying that that's what like all LGBTQ people should do, because everybody processes in their own way. But for me, I've found that with friends and family members in my life who don't understand what's going on, being able to educate them, if I have the energy and the capacity to do so, emphasis on that, educating them with love and compassion so that they can actually kind of see what it would be like to be in our shoes, can be really powerful. So again, honor your boundaries though, and lean on support and try to create community and happiness through this time as much as you can, because that ultimately is like what it is about. And that's what's going to show people how we can create this change, and that we are humans too, and we deserve the same rights. So
right. And that that's only part of us. Like LGBTQ, what, however you identify, that's only one part of you. Like we are so many more other things too. So just remembering that like when you hear about all the negative things that are happening, right? Like you're still so many other incredible, amazing things as well that you deserve to be celebrated. All of you, right? And if maybe you're in a place right now where you don't feel like you can celebrate that queer piece of you, remember something else. Like, you're an amazing friend, you are a child, you are a parent, you are a sibling, and try to do one good thing for somebody else each day. I find that like, what if I'm feeling down, if I do something for someone else, it just kind of picks me up a little bit. Because we can always find a little slice of joy in something, regardless of what else is going on. I know it might seem hard, and I feel like I've been through a lot this year, but I look at my kids and it's like, how can I not feel proud of how far we've come?
Yeah. Yeah. I always call my grandparents because they're really supportive and they always say really nice things to me. They're very affirming. They say really nice things to me, which is really great. But I also, we actually, in my town, I live in I actually live in the same town where I went to the gay youth group. I happened to move here years later. And we have an Elks Club, which is like, it sounds like this sort of like old timey thing, but there's this really cool Elks Club, and we threw this great fundraiser for LGBTQ charity in Newark, and we had like a dance party, and it was super fun. And we just got to like celebrate each other and community and had like a wonderful fun party, and it was really cool. And I think that there's just so much in like being able to like have a party and be able to do something for a good cause that just like uplifts my heart. And I think it's like really the foundation of like what our community is, like the roots of our community from like Stonewall and before was just like really strong, trans women, Black trans women who were out there dancing and lifting each other up and watching each other's backs in the face of some really brutal circumstances towards their community. And then these are the people who like made it happen for us. And I think it's just amazing to like, I'm so inspired by that, like our roots and our history and how resilient our community is, that like I know that this is hard, and it's like, wow, that's like real to like give space to that. But it's also like trans joy is resistance, queer joy is resistance. Like our joy and our perseverance is like, it's the resistance that is needed. So it's just like, wow, it's good stuff. I do love being queer.
But I think like our community as a whole, like I just feel like is such a supportive community. I think that when you are a part of a community that is marginalized, there's a lot of support, and there's a lot of like, I have your back and I'm going to look out for you and I'm going to stand up for you. Like if I get like a yucky comment on one of my posts, like so many people like come and not attack, but well sometimes but like educate or like respond on my behalf, or so I don't typically waste my energy on it, but it's like the people that come to stand up for you, it's just incredible. And then people that you don't even know, you know what I mean? Like it's because they feel what you're also feeling. I love being part of this community.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's do some Q&A and we'll keep the convo going. How's that sound?
Perfect.
All right. Let's see what we got here in our Q&A from this wonderful audience that we have. So we have an anonymous attendee asks, advice for not knowing your identity and discovering it. So I'll just share some advice, and then y'all can. When I was coming out as trans, or even like coming out as non-binary and then trans, Reddit was a super helpful. I know this sounds kind of crazy, but it was like a crowdsourcing tool where I could really just like learn about other people who had a lot of questions and just read their questions and see if like I related to their questions or I learned anything from it. So I know that's like a very specific thing, but like Reddit was very helpful for me.
Yeah, I think, for me, I personally really struggled with knowing my exact identity and knowing how to label that. It was more so in the feelings I was experiencing. So I get so many DMs and questions from people every day saying, should I come out if I don't know what my label is? Like, what if my label changes? And I think that for some people, labels can be really empowering, and for others, they can be really disempowering and confusing. And so what I recommend is like not getting so caught up in like the exact identity or the exact labels, unless it's helpful for you. And just following the feels, like following what excites you, following what feels authentic and natural for you, and just like seeing how that goes, and knowing that I believe my own personal identity is fluid. It's ever changing. It's multidimensional. As I evolve, my identity evolves. Who I love may evolve as well. And like, that's okay. That's totally cool. And I think that we get so caught up in what everyone around us will think, when really people just want us to be happy. Like, we're thinking about it so much more than anybody else is. So follow the feels and do what feels good for you presently.
I love that. And that's exactly what I was going to say in terms of like the labels. I think that a label is for society. Typically, it's kind of like society needs to know how to place you. They're like, who are you and what are you? I need to know what you are. So yeah, I've always struggled with that. I don't fully identify with lesbian. I don't identify with bi, and I don't identify with queer. But I feel like for society, lesbian is easier because I'm married to a woman. So when I need to do that, that's what it is. But like, I don't think you need a label. I think that it's really, unless, again, as Ariel said, like, unless that's helpful for you and empowering for you. I think that, yeah, like she said, just like following your heart and like just feeling what feels good to you, and knowing that you don't have to identify, or if you identify now, that can change, and that's fine. And if other people are bothered by that, like, that's on them.
Yeah, right on. All right, we have a question from Wilson. Wilson asks, I was in a relationship for 25 years, in a lesbian relationship, and got dumped with no warning. Now I'm starting over for the first time as a lesbian, and I feel like I am starting over being around mainly straight people. How do I find a new gay, lesbian, transgender people who are moving forward and telling all the new people I've met that I'm a lesbian? Well, thanks for sharing that, Wilson. It's a lot. It's a lot that you're going through, for sure.
Yeah, Wilson, thank you so much for sharing with us. And, breakups, no matter what kind, shape, or reason, are always incredibly challenging and difficult. And so I want you to know that you're not alone in that. And starting over is also, at times it can feel a little bit daunting, but it's also a beautiful experience to be able to surround yourself with new people, immerse yourself in new environments, communities where you feel supported. And to be honest, the process of coming out continues for life. As of now, I feel like I'm continuously coming out to people, and it gets easier and easier and easier over time. And I used to not feel that way. I used to feel like every time I was about to come out to somebody new, it was like there was a boulder in my chest, and it felt like I couldn't even say it. And just with practice and feeling comfortable in your identity, it might take some time, but I promise that it will get easier. And, you can start by just coming out to one person who you feel comfortable coming out to, and surround yourself with those supportive people who will have your back through that experience.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And as you said, I have to come out all the time, especially with kids. People are always like, "Oh, your husband," and I'm like, "Nope, my wife." And yeah, and it's kind of like in the first few years of being a parent, it's like I would kind of like hesitate because I don't know these people, because I'm like on a random playground. But now I think it's amazing and empowering, and I can educate other people, and I'm more confident in who I am. So, Wilson, I think that it's really finding your own confidence in who you are, and really loving who you are. And that could take time. Breakups are hard in 25 years. That's a lot. For me, after my breakups, I was in therapy. That was helpful for me. May not be for you. And depending on where you are in terms of like finding community, see if there are any local Facebook groups, or any local gay bars or anything like that you can go to. But in the interim, I would find community on social media, because it's not limited to a certain geographic area, and you can just see so much incredible representation from all over the world.
Yeah, great advice. Let's see. As a lesbian, my concern with dating, partnering with trans men is a loss of participating in my lesbian community. How are you able to let go of past support community? Oh, that's an interesting one. Do either of you have a comment on that one? I can like jump in with my wife's experience.
Yeah, right. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna let Gwen.
You know, it was so my wife really went through sort of her own processing with my coming out as trans, because she married me and we were, you know, I identified with she, her pronouns when we got married, and then kind of went into identifying with they, them pronouns and as non-binary. And then when I came out as trans, and was like, I'm going to start to medically transition. You know, it was a journey, because it was like she had a sort of reservations about not being perceived as like queer in, you know, out in public. And I think it was something that, you know, it's like any fear, you are the unknown of like what's going to happen on the other side of this fear is a lot more daunting than, and I don't want to speak for her, but like our relationship is great and we're still married, but like it was more daunting than the actual experience of what going through the transition together, my transition together, and seeing how she felt about it and how she was able to relate to it. And so I don't know, what I've found is like we didn't let go of our past support community. Like all of the people who have been in my life as allies and advocates have stayed in my life. And I've gained a lot more people in the community just by being out and being myself and like sharing my story and my experience authentically. And so we've both really benefited from that. Our kid, we have a kid, has also benefited from it. And so it's just been a really beautiful thing to just go through the unknown and see that it's like, it's actually better than anything we could have expected.
Yeah, I would hope that you wouldn't lose community at all, but in fact, gain community. You know, I just saw a friend of mine go through this as well, transitioning, and, you know, he and his wife have gained community, you know, because now he's a part of a trans masc community, and like it's incredible and beautiful, and to see their relationship flourish through it all was amazing. So yeah, I think that like if you're going to lose people in the community that were like part of your support, they probably weren't really that supportive to begin with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say.
Ariel, I saw you be like, that's right.
Yep.
Cool. If I go to another question.
Yeah.
All right. Gabrielle asks, how did you and do you deal with family who's not accepting and now won't talk to you? How do you deal with loss of friends, family, and other people that were in your life before you came out?
I'm happy to start with this. You know, I feel like with the process of coming out, I prepared myself to lose people, although I was hoping I would gain more people, and that is what happened. I think that when we are living as our authentic selves, whether you're an LGBTQ person or not, even like straight people who go through their own experiences of living more authentically, there's always a shedding that happens. Like we begin to shed people in our life that are maybe not necessarily meant to be by our side, you know, going forward. And that can be really painful. It can be really challenging. And so I don't want to dismiss that. And at the same time, those people probably aren't, you know, the most supportive people that you want around you anyway. So, you know, with family especially, that can be really hard. And I think, you know, Jenna can probably speak to this too with your experience, but like, exactly what you were saying earlier, giving people the time they need to process it. I've been really surprised by the amount of parents, family members I've seen who have come around with time, and in realizing and in witnessing your happiness and your authentic radiance, like they begin to understand that this is a part of you that you can't really change. So yeah, I think with time, with space, with boundaries, and also cultivating your own family, your own community. Like family doesn't need to be the family we were born into. We can also create that with new humans as well.
Yeah, I love the, chosen family is, kind of our community's, tagline, I guess. I mean, I have to say, I have been very lucky. I haven't lost people for coming out, but when I did come out, so I'm an only child, very close to my family, very close to my parents. I came out to my mom first in person, and her brother's gay actually, and she's a hairdresser, so she's like always around gay people. So she was surprised but also supportive. I came out to my dad over the phone because I was scared, and he hung up on me, and it did not go well. And it took a while. I didn't see him for a few months, and I was living out of state. I was at school, and we didn't talk much, and we used to talk every day. And I would talk to my mom, and again, I knew that it was a process for him and for me. I was going through my own stuff because, again, I had like not even been questioning for very long, but I had found, my girlfriend at the time, and I was happy and in love, and I was like, this is no, like, I'm not gonna not be with her because my dad is struggling and having his own stuff because he was in the military and raised a Catholic, right? After a few months, he did meet my girlfriend. We dated for almost 3 years. But there was still stuff, right? Like he wasn't like this out and proud, like whatever. But with my wife now, like the dude is loud and proud. Like he sports pride shirts all year long. He tells everybody that he meets, and he talks to everyone, he's the biggest extrovert, that like his daughter's gay and has a wife. And like if anyone says anything slightly homophobic, like he shuts it down. But it took a few years for him to get to that place. And that's okay. Our relationship ebbed and flowed, but we each allowed each other to process. And I didn't try to like force anything on him. He would ask me questions, and he like when my ex and I broke up, he's like, so you're gonna date men now? And I was like, I don't think so. And he was like, oh. But then like after that, I think he kind of realized like it's not a phase and that I was happy. So, I had to find the confidence in myself to say, this is who I am. This is who I'm going to be with. And you're going to be okay with that, or not going to be around as much. It's not easy for sure, but yeah.
Ariel, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I agree. I think just like, giving people the time, kind of just, piggybacking off of that, giving the people the time and space that they need. I'm like an optimist in life. Like I always try to be as hopeful as possible. And I'm like, oh, I hope that there's a fairy tale ending here, even if something's really hard. And so I think that just, holding the hope that maybe with time they will change, but in the meantime, prioritizing your happiness, your peace, and love for yourself, love and respect for yourself. So surrounding yourself with people who, in the meantime, do fully see you, support you, and understand you.
Yeah, I want to say that when I was coming out, like that whole, the kind of the couple months where I was like, what's happening here? And I was in school, I was in law school in New York. So it was like a very liberal place. And there was a lot of people who are LGBTQ. And I was like, a couple of my friends, I was like, I don't know if I can date a woman. They're like, why not? I have. And I'm like, you have? And it was like, so many of them were like, yeah, I'm bi or like pan or like, and I was like, what? Because they didn't look the traditional lesbian, right? Like, again, I am guilty of having this vision in my head of what a lesbian should look like. And of course, the first lesbian I meet when I went to law school, she was butch. And I was like, yeah, like that's the mold. And then, my ex was femme. And it was just, it's a whole process for us. But again, I had people surrounding me that when I did come out and when things were hard with my dad, they were like, dude, whatever, like we're here, we love this, you guys are so good together, you need to, you're like, yeah, just finding your people, while you're going through that. If the other people in your life aren't as supportive, is really, really helpful. And these people I didn't know for long, and even for a few months. So it's not like these were like my best friends that I had that I knew I could count on. These are people I met like a few months before that became like family.
Yeah, it's amazing how that can happen, right? When it's like really on like a deep connective issue.
Yeah. Also, just quickly want to say, like, I know this was an earlier question, but it relates to all of this. You really never know who is watching, who has been like, had their eye on you, whatever it is. You never know who you're inspiring by simply being yourself. And so for me, a part of my coming out process, it was like, okay, this feels really, really hard for me to do, but I do feel sort of ready to come out. And what like drove it home for me was the people that I knew I could impact in being my authentic self. And there are going to be people who, even if you're not like talking about it on social media every day, or even if you're not a public figure, like there are people who are going to be so inspired by you. And it comes back to that earlier question of just by being our authentic selves, we have no idea who we're inspiring, and it's like actually changing the world by just being us and creating more compassion. So
Yeah, that was, when I came out a couple of years ago, my son was already 3, and a big part of it was like I want to teach my kid like the value of like living your truth, like that was like a huge catalyst. All right, we have time for a couple more questions. What are your views on the concept of disclosure? I feel like in various social settings, there's this sense that people have a right to know your orientation and project that on you, when in fact we as LGBT people don't owe others, when it's only a part of who we are and doesn't define our whole self. So what do you think?
yeah, I 100% agree. I don't think you ever need to disclose unless like that's something that you feel comfortable with. It's not like straight people have to say, "Oh, I'm attracted to this person." No, it's the same thing. And anyone who believes in disclosing that, that seems more like a personal problem that they have that they can address. So protect yourself, honor your boundaries, and only do what feels safe and comfortable for you.
You don't owe it to anyone. Like, I don't even see how it would be relevant for it to be like required for you to say. I mean, I'm just open in general. And I've actually always been open in job interviews because I didn't want to work in a setting that wasn't accepting or open. But it's weird. I'm like, I remember interviewing for this law firm in New York City. I was like, by the way, I have a girlfriend. So you guys cool? And it was like literally what I said, because I had no idea how to say anything like this as a 20-something-year-old. But did I have to out myself? No. Like it wasn't required at all. But I think that if you want to know that you're in a safe space. Yeah.
My wife would always joke, like, I think because I was very like, I've always been very masculine presenting, and like used to identify as butch, and I would like went to the veterinarian once, and like the vet asked me like, so what is your, like something about my husband, and I told my wife afterwards, and she would just laugh. She just laughed so hard. It's like still a joke in our family. She was like, I thought you had a husband. So it was disclosure was never really an issue for me at that time. Now it's, I guess, more of an issue, interestingly enough, as a trans person. So, all right, one more question, and then we're gonna wrap it up. Let's see. Do you guys have any suggestions on social media groups to join for support? I think I know you shared a bunch of links, which we are going to share, but do you want to just sort of like give some context behind those links and the things that you've sort of shared as resources?
Yeah. So for We the Rainbow, I have, an Instagram that's just dedicated to the LGBTQ community, and that's at We the Rainbow Official on Instagram. And if you go to that page, there's links on how to sign up for my free community, which is like a Facebook group. There's also additional resources, and it's all free. So that's one way to meet people online virtually from all around the world. And I don't know, do you want us to speak to the other links that we provided right now or wait for that?
You can, if you, we have a couple of minutes and we're going to share those now. So yeah, feel free to.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And then beyond that, I am relaunching my signature group coaching program, Unleashed, in July for LGBTQ people who are looking to live a more empowered, liberated, and authentic life, and who's really ready to live with more self-compassion, self-forgiveness, release internalized shame. It has helped so many people heal from this shame that they've been experiencing for so many years and cultivate a community that really supports them. So that's something. And if you're an ally and you are interested in inclusion work, I also have a training happening in July as well for business owners and professionals. So lots going on. You can always reach out to me if you have any questions. Like I said, my DMs are open and I would love to connect with you guys.
Yeah, appreciate you doing all that work. Yeah, it's amazing. Creating really safe spaces. That's great.
Thank you.
I love
And how
that.
about you?
Yeah. So for me, I don't have like a community of like a group of sorts, but one of my really good friends runs same-sex parents on Instagram. So it's an account and every day posts a different family, just to kind of see what's out there, who's out there, what you can identify with, who you can identify with. And then when we were going through the fertility process, I joined some like lesbian parent groups on Facebook. So it was like lesbian TTC, so trying to conceive, and like just different lesbian fertility groups. So it was like actually like an interactive conversation type group. And then if you are looking to grow your family or get resources there, my organization is called Connecting Rainbows. So it's not like a group kind of forum, but has the resources, and then just kind of you can follow other accounts that follow me, and I do have blogs and vlogs interviewing different individuals and families just on their journeys, just for relatability and just kind of see what other people have gone through.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing those. And I think we'll also have a recording of this on our blog, and we'll include in that article links to what you just shared about. So before we go, I just want to share a couple of things for our audience. So if you are interested in becoming a meetup organizer, you want to create community, or you want to find others who share your interests, you can start a group and save 30% on your first subscription. If you go to this link here, Meetup Savings. And we also have a podcast you can check out, hosted by David Siegel, our exuberant CEO who loves to talk about Meetup in the world and other people who are creating community. It's a great podcast. Check it out. You can scan the code here. I just want to say a really heartfelt thank you to our guests today. It's been amazing connecting with you and just talking to you. I just had a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your personal stories and your experiences here with our community.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having us. This was so nice, and I hope that it impacted or inspired one of you in the audience today, and just grateful to be able to have these conversations. I know like little me would have never dreamed of this years ago, so it always feels like inner child work whenever we get to like have these conversations and talk about it. It's so healing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. All right, everybody. See you soon. Bye.
Bye, everyone.